Welcome to this explainer. Think about this for a second. You spend roughly a third of your life paralyzed in the dark, vividly hallucinating, and modern biology still cannot fully explain why. Every single night, you close your eyes and literally enter a completely different world. You experience vivid landscapes, intense emotions, and completely bizarre scenarios. But despite all our incredible advancements in neuroscience, the exact mechanisms behind this nightly phenomenon remain a deeply unresolved cold case. So today, we're going to bypass the basics. We're laying out the specific evidence we have, examining the massive gaps in our neural mapping, and trying to understand what is actually going on while we sleep.
To truly appreciate the scale of this mystery, I want you to imagine experiencing something incredibly vivid, maybe terrifying, maybe euphoric, every single night, only to have a staggering 95% of it completely vanish by the time you pour your morning coffee. Seriously, think about that, 95%. If you lost 95% of your waking memories every single day, it would be a literal medical emergency. But in our sleep, it's just a standard Tuesday.
That 95% just completely evaporates, leaving us with this tiny 5% sliver that we actually retain. Researchers are completely stumped as to why the brain suppresses or, maybe just fails to store almost all of our dream content. It's like a massive nightly data purge, and we have absolutely no idea what actually triggers that biological delete button in our memory networks.
Section 1. The ultimate unresolved mystery.
This right here is basically our scientific caseboard, showing that despite all of our advanced brain imaging, major gaps persist across three primary fronts: purpose, dream recall, and neural encoding. We just don't fully understand the generation of dreams, we don't know their fundamental meaning, and we're honestly still pretty much in the dark regarding their therapeutic potential. It's kind of wild to think that we carry around the most complex object in the known universe inside our skulls, yet its nightly routine is still heavily categorized as a series of profound research gaps.
Section 2. Why do we even dream?
Now, what is the actual function of a dream? It's literally the most basic, fundamental question you could possibly ask about sleep. Yet, if you sit down with top neuroscientists, they remain completely split on the answer. There is zero universal agreement. Honestly, if you ask 3 neuroscientists why we dream, you'll probably get 5 different answers. We spend a massive chunk of our lives asleep, and a lot of that time dreaming, but the core biological function, the fundamental why of it all, is still entirely up for debate.
So we're left with these competing, completely unproven theories. Is it memory consolidation? Like, is the brain acting as a hard drive filing away important events and tossing out the trash? Or maybe it's emotional regulation, acting as a kind of overnight therapy where we process complex feelings in a neurologically safe environment. Or, and this is a real possibility, perhaps they're just evolutionary leftovers, random neural static firing off while the cerebral cortex rests. The fact that empirical science cannot yet firmly prove which of these is true is just absolutely fascinating.
Section 3. The Great Disappearing Act.
The profound irony here is just staggering. I mean, we have a brain capable of mapping the universe, calculating quantum physics, and creating breathtaking art, right? Yet it still cannot explain its own failure to store a dream you had just 5 minutes ago. Is the brain actively suppressing this content because it's somehow neurochemically harmful or just totally unnecessary to remember? Or is the hippocampus and the broader memory storage mechanism just, flipped off during sleep, causing it to fail to store the information in the first place? We simply don't have the data yet.
Section 4. Mechanics of the sleeping brain.
Now, you might have been taught, or at least heard at some point, that dreams only happen during REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. Well, actually, scratch that. It's a total myth. Dreams occur in both REM sleep and NREM, or non-REM sleep, and this makes the entire process incredibly complex. The relationship between the specific stage of sleep you're in, the neural activity lighting up on an fMRI, and the actual dream report a person gives when they wake up is deeply entangled and, quite frankly, poorly understood by researchers.
This brings us to neural encoding, which is the actual physical process of how dreams are generated by the brain and stored in our memory. Brain imaging definitely shows a ton of activity happening while we sleep. We literally see the lights flashing on the monitors. But the actual causal mechanisms of that neural encoding, the specific pathways that translate a single firing neuron into a high-definition vision of you, say, flying over a city, remain completely unclear. It's like we see the engine running, but we have no idea how it actually makes the car move.
Section 5. Lucid dreaming and therapy.
Okay, you've probably heard of lucid dreaming, right? That state where you become completely aware that you're dreaming and can even control the narrative. Well, this is where the neuroscience gets really interesting. Researchers actually see promising prefrontal brain involvement alongside specific electrophysiological markers, like this really distinct spike in gamma band activity when people enter this state. But here's the catch. The methods used to induce lucid dreaming are wildly inconsistent. What works for one person does absolutely nothing for another. So because we can't reliably trigger it, the clinical applications right now are still very limited.
But man, the desire to unlock it is strong, mostly because of the massive therapeutic potential. Researchers are actively exploring how manipulating the dream space could help treat PTSD, alleviate severe anxiety, and reduce chronic nightmares. There's actually preliminary evidence suggesting that if we can interact with this dream space, we can help patients physically rewire how they process trauma. It's a real game changer. However, because our fundamental baseline understanding is just so patchy, much larger clinical trials and standardized protocols are desperately needed before we can claim to have a proven, reliable treatment.
So drawing from all the current source material in neuroscience and sleep research, we're really left with this stark reality. Despite all of our modern imaging, despite the state-of-the-art sleep labs and the massive datasets, we just have to admit that the actual generation, purpose, and meaning of dreams is a puzzle piece we literally do not have yet. The sleeping brain remains an enigmatic black box. We know what goes in, and we sure know what comes out when we wake up, but the exact mechanics operating inside that box in the middle of the night, it's still a profound mystery.
And that brings us to the end of our investigation for today. We've explored the vanishing memories, the totally conflicting theories, and the massive untapped therapeutic potential. But since the scientific community still cannot definitively explain your dreams, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder the next time you wake up and try to hold on to those fading nightly mysteries. If science cannot explain your dreams, what do they mean to you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the mysteries of your own mind.